Hello, and welcome to the 2-year anniversary of the Dungeon vs. Guild House. As you can tell, things are a little bit special this week because not just am I not just speaking to one person, but we have a delightful roundtable to chat about all things adventuring. I'm absolutely privileged to be joined by Ginny Loveday, Anthony Joyce Rivera, and Sadie Lowry. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
So I was thinking to kind of like kick things off then. I obviously dude, I'm all business. we've got an hour. We need to be kind of efficient with it. But if we don't mind kind of going around and just everyone kind of just saying a little bit about some of the work and maybe like some of the adventures you've kind of been publishing or creating. You know what? I'll kick it off, Ginny. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've already poured my champagne. I'll go first. Okay, adventures I've been publishing. Oh gosh, I have a lot. You can find most of them on the DMsGuild. Actually, lately I've been working on a lot of Kickstarters though. So if you check out the I think it closed, so I think you could still pledge though. The Amazing Encounters Kickstarter from Christian Zook is the last thing that I turned in. We also have one that we just announced the other day, by the time this airs, with Andrew Bashinsky called Deep and Dangerous. Mm-hmm. I am very excited to be doing some NPC work there and doing up some factions. And then I'm also working on the I was about to say Espergenesis, but I don't guess it necessarily is. Alligator Alley, expedition from the mysterious peaks that you can use with Espergenesis or with regular old 5e characters or with both dragons and lasers all at the same time.
Yes!
And my most... No, I don't want to say most exciting because that makes the others feel not so exciting. They're all very exciting.
Equally exciting.
But my most recent thing that I've just picked up is I am going to be working for Steamforged Games on the so they just announced the Dark Souls game, and I'm going to be doing some monster creation there.
Cool.
So in this case, I don't have to be sorry when you die to them. You're supposed to.
it's all part of the mechanics.
That's kind of the thing with Dark Souls. The most commonly viewed screen is the end, or you died. You died.
You died. You have been you've been busy like mad. It's impressive.
Yeah, and I've been doing a lot of streaming production for Baldwin Games. We're doing it every month now, so super busy. But everyone else has been doing stuff. Let's
Yeah, you know, I get it. I'm the host. I'll pick on Anthony. It's your turn now.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me here. So recently I got the Tenacious Bard vs. Orcus. It's a one-on-one adventure, fully illustrated by Brian Patterson. It's awesome. It's on the DMsGuild. I've been doing some work for Ghostfire Gaming on their blogs. I'm working on a secret project with Sadie. That's kind of cool, really cool. And I got, an Arcadia article I'm working on coming out in a couple months. And I have an adventure in the works for Bob World Builder. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. I'm excited to look at 2022 and all the cool, fun stuff out there. And I'm going to get my champagne here to celebrate the 2-year anniversary. Let's see here. Here we go. Whoop, there we go.
Hey.
All right. We're gonna get the party started. So thanks for having me on, Matthew. And happy 2 years.
Yeah, I will say technically as a 2-year-old, the podcast can't drink yet. But we can definitely drink on their behalf.
Yeah, but so isn't it like months are equal to years for podcasts? So it's 24 months old now.
Dog years. It's like one. Yeah, no, it's definitely aged me. Sadie, would you like to bring us home?
Celebratory mug.
My celebratory mug. Matthew, happy 2 years. Thank you so much for having us. That's amazing. Adventures. So I finished up edits a few months ago on The Devil's Bridge, which is a Slavic folklore inspired adventure by a company called Yellow Madhouse. It is currently going through proofreading and layout, and it's pretty cool. You should look it up. I'm working on an Arcadia article that is a little bit adventurous, different from your typical adventure, but I think very interesting. I'm working on that secret thing with Anthony. We both put our all into this. I'm very excited. And in 2 months, less than 2 months, Critical Role and Wizards of the Coast's Call of the Netherdeep is coming out, and I did adventure and dungeon design for that, and I'm so excited to see what people think.
Wow, honestly, I'm absolutely I'm honored to be in the call with all three of you guys. Honestly, like the you've bombarded me with a whole host of projects which are just all sound amazing and kind of fantastic. Wow. Okay. Well, hot damn. Well,
we're gonna do Arcadia next, Matthew. It's just
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's in the. It's what? Yeah. It's. I think I'm 4 years down the line. That's my. You know.
But you reserved a slot
on the pipeline. But no, you know what? So yeah. So we're here for this roundtable to just have a good old chat about adventures. I chose adventures as a topic because I like them the most. And it's my podcast. So we're just going to kind of break it down bit by bit. And I honestly think the best place to kind of start is at the start. So what I guess like as like a question for the table then is like what are some of the tips or tricks to kind of starting an adventure in lieu of not the classic tavern start?
Oh, like actually like the physical start for it, not like what do you do when you're staring at a blank page start.
Oh, you know what? Oh, let's.
No, that's too real, Ginny. We're leaving that question behind.
Don't do that to me. No.
So
I got a lot of good answers for that. That's my entire show.
Gosh.
So I am a huge fan of atypical adventure starts. It's a few people have heard that when I started my campaign, I asked my players, I said, are you okay with a very non-traditional campaign start? Can I do whatever I want? And they said, yeah, we trust you. This is our first campaign together. That tells you how like tight our bonds of friendship are. First campaign together, first time playing. And I said, can I do whatever I want? And they said, yeah, go for it. And I dumped them in the realms of the lost god, his creepy blue forest. And I said, you wake up, you don't remember the last year of your life, and you don't know each other, and you're in the realms of the lost, and now you have to get out. And that's how I started my campaign. And so, but I think that the big thing with starting an adventure is you really need some kind of inciting incident. Like we throw around that phrase a lot, but the big thing for me is you need a reason for these yahoos to like want to go. And that's kind of the biggest thing. That's where a lot of adventures fail is if the players can ask the question like, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we go do this? You have a problem.
Ginny.
I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm doing round tables. We raise hands. I've got like two ways that I like to start. Depends on what kind of group it is. Is it a group that's played before, or is it a group that's never played? If they've never played, brand new players to tabletop RPGs or just to D&D, whatever, which I do a lot of those groups. I like to do you're part of a adventuring guild, and there's a bulletin board. Here's a couple of quests that you could choose from. Just your classic, the farmer around here is having a problem. Bandits have been on this road. We need you to accompany this caravan of high value goods. No, don't ask any questions. That sort of thing. Which all of those, you've got the bulletin board. You know why you're here. You know why you're taking this quest. You want to be adventurers. You want to learn. So that's pretty straightforward. And that really works well for people who they don't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
And then what I really like to do when I have a group that, all knows what they're doing, maybe they don't necessarily know one another. That's less important. But if they do, it makes it more fun, is start them off with, you're all on the run. You've been framed for something.
Yeah.
But fortunately, one of you got a message from somebody put together a backstory in the group. There's always one. From, a person that and they have a place you can hide out. When you get to the place you can hide out, though, shit's gone terribly wrong.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like, I kind of like the idea of you kind of have that good amount of leeway to literally no hesitation. You just drop them straight in the action as kind of quick as possible to kind of set the pace of the adventure to kind of keep people going forward. And then it's less about what do we do next? It's we're on the back foot already. We kind of have to try our best to kind of catch up.
And that works particularly well if you don't want to start at first level. People who are like, oh God, I've played so many first level characters. You're like, all right, we want to start at 10. By level 10, you've done something that you're in trouble for. Don't worry about it.
And what about you, Anthony? What's your kind of approach to starting an adventure?
No. So when I write adventures and when I run them, I think of two different types. And one's in media res, where you're starting in the action, something's going on. You see this in my Blood Hunter adventure. It's almost like a Witcher scene where you're showing up at this house of a werewolf, and you kind of go from there. So you're right in the action. The other ones are skipping the quest giving part. So I've seen a lot of DMs that have a really cool adventure, and they start off with, you go to talk to the quest giver, and that quest giver talk ends up taking like an hour and a half, and it eats all their time. So I would recommend just skip giving the quest and assume the players have accepted it, and say, you begin on the road having accepted the quest of blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And so that way you can just get to the meat and potatoes of the adventure and jump right in, and don't worry about eating up your, an hour and a half or 2 hours of your 4-hour slot that night. So that's my recommendations there.
Yeah, I think everyone has kind of heard the old wizard explain the quest and times over.
Yeah. How much are you going to pay us? I want to roll to have them pay me more. Oh, come on. It's been like 5 hours.
I like that one. The Mist Hunters campaign does that. You get a letter and it explains what your investigation is. You go. No time for questions. You only got a letter. You can't ask me questions.
So interesting. So that kind of like ties into like another kind of question then, which is kind of the divide between how much like guidance you kind of give for the kind of the DM kind of going in, because obviously given what kind of plot hook, the kind of exposition of like why is going on is kind of like you can kind of hand wave it, you can kind of point in the kind of right direction, but there is always that kind of that pull of like designers where you kind of again I kind of want to write as much as possible and just bloat the words out in every which direction, but sometimes I guess it's like knowing that line of like, okay, well this is probably a section where we can kind of allude or hint to some things, but leave it up to the DM to kind of fill in the gaps. I'm curious if anyone has any kind of like thoughts on that kind of divide.
I kind of want to know if Ginny agrees with me on this as editors. I tend to err very strongly on the DMs generally know that they can improv or change anything they want. Like, they don't need my permission to tweak a scene. And so for the DMs who need more and who aren't comfortable improving and who wouldn't know how to run it, I'm always on the no, give guidance, and if you want to remind the DM, you can change this if you want, that's great, but no, give guidance. You're writing a technical manual. You don't leave the instructions on how to put the interior of the car together out of the instruction manual and go, you can make it look as cool as you want inside the car. That's great. Where does the seat go?
We tried that in season 8 of the Adventurers League. The less is more approach. We left that behind because as it turns out, more is actually more. So they do need that guidance. I definitely agree. Like, obviously you want everything to be concise, especially as an editor, but like conciseness doesn't mean leaving out things that like you can't assume that every DM has been doing this for 20 years. Some of them aren't even 20 years old. And so, like, here's the thing of it. That's a great place for a sidebar. Some other options.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, like, I don't need to, I remember talking to a couple authors on something, and it was like, well, we want the DM to do this encounter in feel free to run it in multiple ways. We don't want to constrict them. And I said, that's fine, but they need to know how this creature is going to act. Like right now, you don't have anything. So I, as DM, am saying, is this the type of creature who will just pull out a blade and attack? Will it trick them? Will it manipulate them? Will it lie to them? Like, even just that is monumentally more helpful than, no, you have freedom to do whatever you want. Give me something.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of bullet points there with like enemy motivations and tactics go a long way.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like setting up the stage so that the characters are very vivid, the NPCs and the motivations are clear to the DM. And sometimes too, I think setting up an encounter or a scene that's a situation and giving the DM the guidance of whatever the outcome of this encounter is, it doesn't really matter because the end goal is what the adventure is about. And I think giving them the flexibility of, okay, there's not a set outcome of this encounter. As long as I get to the end of the adventure, it helps DMs feel comfortable with not having to micromanage everything and, oh, did I play the NPC right? And whatnot. So giving them leeway that way.
I apologize to anybody who ever wanted me to play an NPC a certain way in something they wrote.
Yeah, I do what I want.
Yeah, this is my game. No,
You should have called me and told me.
no, I kind of echo the statements, and what one of the things that kind of like early days when I was kind of like writing adventures, looking at the kind of adventure league format was super informative for me, because it is that kind of like the subheadings of like, what does this NPC know? Like I could give you a box text of which, you know, they give their monologue, or I can just say these 4 bullet points. These are the core information you can deliver in whatever kind of cadence or, you know, flourish you want. And the same for, you know, like monster tactics and that side of things as well.
That's actually one of my favorite things that I've learned from writing so much for organized play and DMing so much for organized play is that you're writing this for thousands of people who have a different view on what you've just wrote means. Yeah. And they're all going to run it how they read it in their mind. So, you know, you want to give very clear but short so that they can fluff it out however they want.
I'm curious though. So Anthony, as like a comparison, then does it necessarily change like in like 1v1 or like duet style adventure writing?
Oh yeah, wow, that's a whole different. So what I learned tackling so I've done 2 one-on-one, and I learned through the process of it requires a lot of content. So I'll give you an example. When I design a 4-hour adventure, the amount of content I have to provide for a one-on-one adventure is much more. The reason is there is no one else to talk to. Like when a group of characters are in a situation, they talk to each other like, hey, what do we do? What do you guys think? Are we going to go take this job? Are we not? Are we going to go in the cave? Are we not? Well, there's no one. It's the player. They're like, I'm going to go in the cave. Boom, done. So those times that you have conversations are very short. And in combat, it's one-on-one. So it's player, DM, player, DM, player, DM. So they happen very rapidly. So you have to kind of build more combat encounters. You have to structure the social encounters in a way where there can be like a real discussion between the GM and the player, because there's other players that take that time away, the screen time, so to speak, are not there. So yeah, it's a lot more. And also I'll say for DMs, it's a lot more intensive. Like I come away exhausted because you can't step back and let the players talk amongst themselves.
Yeah. You always have to be on.
Yeah.
It's ping pong, boom, boom, boom. And so for the player, and the DM, it's much more burdensome.
There's no like 40-minute discussion about how to open this door or what to do about said door. It's well, no, yeah, I must admit, I never really thought about that. The which of which
I would enjoy that a lot for the role-playing aspect, but less so for literally everything else.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to hear, and I guess I'm curious.
I don't have anyone to argue with you to tell you that opening that door is a bad idea.
Yeah,
exactly.
I guess that's where sometimes the position of like an NPC can kind of come in. And I guess with the is it kind of common to sometimes add like a DMPC within?
Yeah,
kind of more...
you have a sidekick, and the sidekick is usually there for the DM to help tag along, because the player, you want to role play, right? You want to banter back and forth with someone, so you give them this little buddy, and then they talk to them and they have a good time. And that's why it's like the DM, it's a little bit more intensive because you are always on. You are the player's you're their party, you're their enemy, you're the quest giver, so it's a lot, but it's really, I'll tell you this, if you have limited time, you can play a 2-hour session and accomplish what you could in 4 hours in a normal game.
Yeah.
So it's very good to get like short.
Wow.
Boom. Yeah.
You get to be Batman, Alfred, and all the villains while Robin is making all these decisions.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of leads into a nice kind of segue then of the talk of like NPCs in adventures. How does everyone approach NPCs?
Numerously.
Yeah.
Plentifully.
Okay, next question.
Yes, you should approach them. That's kind of the reason they're there, everybody.
I like NPCs for providing connections to adventures that might not exist within the core player group. Like, Anthony knows this. How do I give this away in as little detail as possible? There's an NPC that I wrote that basically they have a tie to the big bad, to like the big bad, in a way that no player can technically have, and that is like, imagine that you have an NPC who's like the villain's like daughter, or you have an NPC who's sort of like the spurned half of this like villainous duo, and you're going after the other half. They have an emotional tie, and I think that their emotions, the players can key into their emotions and use that as sort of fuel to keep going.
Yeah,
I love that. I do that. The villain, ambiguously villainous, that I wrote for Den of Assassins, one of the last Kickstarters I did with Andrew. She's this villain, but she's got this tie into all of the people that you're probably going to do, because she's out there in the city trying to dispense justice. And so like you're probably both trying to hunt down the same crooked noble, and like she's an NPC that you can encounter and you can like fight her, or you can learn so much about all of the terrible wicked people in this city and you can befriend her. And like so you got a lot of options with NPCs like that. Like you want to get her on your side?
Yeah.
Do you want to fight her because technically she's going around murdering people in the city and leaving corpses everywhere? She's definitely not good. I mean, but also, like, what exactly are you doing?
Yeah, I guess it's like with both those examples, it's that kind of interesting interplay in which the NPC's goals align with the players, and how that kind of relationship develops is like, okay, well, are we therefore allies, or like, but it kind of enemy of my enemy is my friend, or what have you kind of things. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I use NPCs in different ways. I'll say one part is to get emotional, an emotional pull from the players themselves, like pulling on their emotional strings. I have some where like I'm a father of 3 boys, so children are like near and dear to me. And maybe it's a cheap tactic, but I know that like people have a natural inclination to like, younger characters, if you will. So in some adventures, I'll have like Fall of Elturel.
Immediately kill them.
Yeah, well, yeah. In Fall of Elturel, which I wrote with Justice Harmon, my good buddy. There's a little girl, and she, you meet her for a moment where you rescue her from some wolves. She tells you she's going to Elturel because she's going to become the greatest wizard ever, and she has a rainbow scarf. And she's like, one day you'll hear about me. I'm going to be famous. And she leaves to go to Elturel, and the players go do their mission. When they come back, Elturel is pulled into hell, and the game closes out with, you see a piece of rainbow scarf floating in the wind towards you. And you're like, oh, is she dead? Is she in hell? I don't know, but I need to go save this girl. And so like, it gives motivation for you to go to hell. It's not for like, I want to save the whole city of Elturel. And that's about like, I want to save this child. Yeah. And so like, how do you take a character and motivate the not only the players' characters, but like the players themselves to have an emotional like reason to play the game and complete the adventure?
Because I think that it's interesting, almost that element of like stakes for like what is at stake for the adventure. Because there are always definitely elements where sometimes the stakes are like too big that the players can't necessarily attach themselves to it, because it's like the case of like, so wait, is the world ending? Like what level of like threat we're dealing with? But when it's that kind of like personal, it is that kind of element. And I guess like I have a similar cheat where I don't go for like young people, I go for like speaking animals. Because that without a doubt, that kind of works. Like they see something cute and fluffy that goes,
if you put a fox in an adventure talking to me, I'm gonna go wherever it says.
Yeah, it's like such a good way to show how things are affecting the small scale and to personalize it and to really bring it home. Because yeah, you can say that so and so is a terrible tyrant, but it's not going to hit home until you meet someone who is like oppressed by that tyranny, or who is helping enforce that tyranny, and seeing that push and pull and how it affects you on a very individual level. Fastest way to get buy-in.
And NPCs really, like, especially when you're like in an open box campaign, they really set like the tone and theme for wherever you're at. So, like at the starter set, all of the NPCs in Phandalin have very distinct personalities. And so if you start talking to them all, you start realizing lots of things are wrong, and that they're all distrustful, and that, everything's not as it seems. And then in other places, like worked with a bunch of friends, and we made up a whole primer and a whole town of NPCs and refugees. And like, we had all of this diversity represented, which wasn't there before the town burnt down, and they were all very like hopeful because we're on the cusp of like rebirth. And so like you really get this tone of like, oh gosh, like they're so sincere and everything. And like whereas you meet other NPCs and you're like, this town all seems very hopeful, but gosh, it really seems like a very good place fake.
So interesting, because you touched on another kind of interesting point about like the structure of adventures kind of as a whole there, talking about, particularly about ones kind of being open-ended versus the kind of more linear adventures. I guess, yeah, to throw that to kind of the collective, how do you guys find that kind of balance between keeping an adventure linear, so again you still have that kind of satisfying climax, versus that's really poorly phrased, versus, you know, just I can't fix that. I'm just gonna
versus a lot of smaller climax.
Versus, yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. I'm out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll say that. So I don't know. There's this big thing about like sandbox and linear and whatever. You know, I'm personally, I think, more of a fan of a structured adventure. The most open worldy sandbox I would get is like Curse of Strahd level, and I like that.
Yeah.
But I think you need to have like a driving force to an end that is conclusive for everyone who plays that adventure. Because I feel like you're almost buying a story, a book, a movie, and as the designer, it's my job to fill that. Like, how does this play out for you as a DM, even if it's like an overarching narrative? Because that's why you're buying it. You're buying it for help. And if I give you like some open sandbox, it's just kind of like, sometimes I think in execution, it's less fulfilling because it's kind of like, what do we do now? Okay, we're doing this. There's maybe not the strong motivational ties and things like that. So I would say I like linear. I think you can get a better story that way. Overall, like on the average, you can get better stories. With open world, it's going to take a very different type of group. And I think some specific groups might thrive in that environment, but on average, it might be a little bit more difficult, and it depends on the group that's running it. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's
question to you then. What did you think of like the open sandbox nature, because they were very different, of like Storm King's Thunder versus how they formatted the sandbox of Curse of Strahd? One was much more.
I think like Curse of Strahd had a very clear, I'm in Barovia, I need to get out. And initially, right when you go to the first town, Barovia, you find out I need to kill this vampire guy to be
but
safe.
I can't do that yet.
Yeah, so but you know, like the path is set there. Storm King's Thunder is a little bit more opaque. It's like, okay, there's this stuff going on. Do you want to go here? Do I want to go like these giants? Do I want to go deal with this dragon in the thing? And so
how many artifacts do I want to collect?
Yeah, it's
giants do I like?
Yeah. So I prefer, I guess, the Curse of Strahd, because I know, because now as a character, I'm motivated. I need to kill this person. Everything I do is to kill this person.
Yeah.
And so it gives me purpose, you know.
What about yourself, Sadie?
I'm very much in agreement with Anthony. And that's mostly because my adventures tend to sort of rely on an emotional through line. And that is so much easier if they stay mostly on the rails the whole time. Where I like to have freedom is sort of like, I like to establish a starting point, an end point, and like a few key scenes leading up to the end point. And then the paths to get there, I might write a few of them and give you a sort of an option about like which path you want to take to get there. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here, like sit you here. I'm going to establish the mood, establish the goal. Do you want to accomplish it this way? Do you want to accomplish it this way? Do you want to help this person? But it's all sort of leading you to like this to converge again. And then at the end, I want to hit you with a few heavy scenes that you've earned on these different, branching paths. And my players, and I learned to design that way because my players prefer that. I asked them once if they felt like they would prefer a more sandboxy campaign, and all of them went, oh, no. They were like, if I didn't have a goal, or if I didn't feel like, I knew what you wanted me to do, I would just sit there paralyzed, like, okay, what now? And so that my group informs a lot of the way I storytell. And like Anthony said, I think that there are other groups that really thrive in like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to go make trouble. And, I'm going to find adventure where I want to find it, and more power to them. But that's not how I personally storytell.
It's interesting because I've actually noticed like almost like a noted divide in between the way I kind of like write kind of adventures versus what I see in like live cast plays. On the kind of like grander, like those playing podcasts and stuff. There's a live. There's a word that I'm missing. What's
live stream?
Live
Actual
stream
plays.
There you go. Actual plays. There you go. That's what I was thinking of.
One of those two words.
It's late for me. That's my excuse. I've noticed that a lot of those kind of campaign formats, they follow a very kind of approach where they kind of throw a lot of like towards the start of the campaign, they throw a lot of hooks in a lot of different kind of directions for the party to kind of pick and choose.
Critical Role.
Yeah.
Yeah, so their flow chart is very diamond shaped on those. So you start out simple, you get a couple of options that branch off, all of those options until you get to like your critical decision points in the center where it all starts funneling back down together to the inevitable conclusion. Mm-hmm. And like that can work. But all of those branches in the middle, that's a lot of design work.
Yeah. Especially
if it's something you're publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like I think that's where I think that's what the divide is, right? So different kinds of groups. Your home group that you're just making an outline for. Let's see. So I've got a nice example here. So this outline, as everyone can see, is a tier 3 6-hour adventure. When I published it's an organized play adventure. When I published it, there's a map and a couple more notes as well. It's got 2 pages. When I published it, it was like 80 pages long. As a home campaign, I could have run it from this outline. Like I didn't need anything else, but the DMs need it.
Yeah,
I need the stat blocks in there. I need all of that. I mean, I've got another one right after that.
You need the if they do this. You know what your players are going to do.
This is one that I didn't publish, and it includes the stat blocks. That's the whole 2-hour adventure.
I'm so envious of your notes. Like I've never before. Like mine are a shamble.
I can't read half that handwriting.
Once
group versus group you don't know.
I once showed my players. I ran an intense, emotional, heart-wrenching 5-hour session for them, and afterward I showed them the Google Doc I was using to run it. It had 8 words on it, and 4 of them were stat blocks, and they were so mad. They were like, how did you do that? What do you mean that's all you had? And it's like, your home group so well. And it's so easy to improv for them. And then you have to like go design and you're like, oh my gosh, okay. I mean, I guess I need to write way more.
I'm so angry that Alan isn't in the room right now because his original outline that he ran all of his author onlys for the Worm Saga from about what I just showed you.
Oh my God.
That's one thing I'll kind of like harsh truth here, right? As designers, and for those out there who want to be designers or are currently designing, like you're making a product, and the amount of work that you put into that product, like a 4-hour adventure is only going to have a certain price tag that it can kind of meet, right? So even if you have 20 alternate paths, you can still only sell it as a 4-hour adventure. So don't waste your time and word count dedicated to that one product, because you're going to make this bloated thing, and that's great in theory, but the reality is it's still going to be $5. And you could make a good adventure that's linear with one path, and you can make those 20 other paths into 20 different adventures and have 20 products to sell now. Yeah. So that's kind of like your time as a designer is valuable. Don't get caught up in every possibility, because at the end of the day, it's just one thing.
I'll say organized play guidelines, not counting stat blocks. A 4-hour adventure is about 5,000 words, 6 hours about 8,000. And then a 8-hour adventure is between 10 and 12. If you're writing a multi-table, everything.
Oh gosh.
Right?
No. Yes.
Let's not talk about that. That's a different episode.
So I was going to latch onto the kind of concept that's become really about like adapting the adventure for like different parties, and obviously very different from like your home game versus to writing adventure. When it comes to essentially being aware of, I guess, the potential party compositions, and particularly in aspects of like playtesting,
especially higher levels.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's obviously there are certain adventures that again there's been times where I'm sure you can just like, oh yeah, I forgot that this spell exists, and that kind of that undoes a lot of just about everything. Like, do I leave that in and then that's like, oh, if you have that spell, congratulations, or I'm just curious about like.
I wanted to write an adventure. Zone of Truth doesn't work here.
It's
real high.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because there's multiple takes on that. And I am one who I do not like to nerf player character abilities for doing that. And now, I get it. Like, there's times where someone can just like banish the big bad guy and it's kind of anticlimactic. But, I personally feel like I'm cheating as a designer. Where I'm like, oh, guess what? They have an anti-magic field here and this doesn't work and this doesn't work. And it's like, then what's the point of me being a tier 3 or 4 player? And if I can't use all my stuff, so I've tried to design encounters. So I've done a tier 4. I've done tier 4. I've done tier 3. And I'd say I go in as a designer saying the player characters can use anything they want. And because of that, I have to throw the kitchen sink at them. So the CR, if the calculation for deadly is like 4,000, it's going to be 120,000 because they're still going to win, because at tier 4, they blow everything away. So just go bananas. Go bananas and just have fun. Yeah.
I will say though, all of that changes too, depending on your target audience, right? So writing something for that you're going to publish that you think home groups are going to pick up is one thing. Writing something that you're going to publish that is going to go in an organized play program is another thing. Writing something that is going to run at a convention and has a constricted time frame is a very specific thing. Like at that point, you have to limit what they can do. Like the at this point now tried and true epics, no spells can be cast with the spell casting time longer than 10 minutes. Because it just has too much of an effect, right? And you can't account for what every single combination at 40 tables is going to have. So, that's that. And I don't mind, even in a normal adventure, dropping an anti-magic zone on a high-level party, but I don't make it permanent. That's not fair. Right, Anthony? It's not fair. Yeah. But, the bad guy's a high level as well. So, yeah, he can negate your magic. But you're distracting him, so it drops, it disappears, it's gone. Good job, you did the thing, and now you got your magic back. Yeah. I don't think it's fair to leave it there permanently, because me, who loves sorcerers, would be like, God, gee, golly, F this, I'm out, I leave. Literally, I can't do anything, so I'm gonna go. I've done that before. I'm so mad.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right.
That was a home game too. I had a DM who's like, well, there's a permanent anti-magic zone over this entire building. And I was like, that one session I sat through, and then we go to the next session and we're somewhere else. And he's like, well, in this one, you can't conjure anything. And I'm like, all right, well, thanks for the cookies. I'm going to go. And they were all like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I'm like, you obviously don't want me to play my character, so I'm out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only spellcaster at the table, and you're literally like, phew.
Yeah. And what about you, Sadie?
I haven't designed as much for high tier as these two. It's hard. So I did for Uncaged Goddesses, and I have to say I had kind of a cheat button, because the goddess I had was Mistra, and because something's up with her, magic's broken, but I definitely didn't. I made sure that I didn't want it to be unfun to cast. And I didn't want to necessarily, take away their magic. So I basically said, it's dangerous to cast. Magic is broken. Go to the Wild Magic Surge table, pick out some of the most dangerous effects on there, and there is a percentage chance that every time you cast, one of those things is going to happen. And I think even that is more fun than just, no, you can't cast. I don't want you to.
I like 100%. To mix that in with the phase res effect from the Out of the Abyss campaign, where sure, you can keep casting, but the more you cast, the more chance you have of your mind getting kind of scrambled. I still hate the madness effect is called madness, and we can get past that eventually at some point. Yeah. But the whole general idea of it's dangerous to cast magic here. It affects your mental state, because that's where your magic spellcasting comes from. It makes sense.
I honestly, I think any chance to use the wild magic table, I agree, it's the most fun of D&D. It's
magic tables.
Yeah, it's fun.
But I guess what I was going to add on to that is my general thing that I kind of get is the fact that when it comes to the concept of balance, it's nebulous. It you can do your best to kind of
you can balance hard. Up to level 5 and then throw it out the window.
Yeah. And sorry, no, go ahead, Anthony.
I've thought about balance a lot as a designer and as a DM, and I came, I think, to this conclusion, and I think that if DMs around just kind of embrace this idea of the characters don't know what the characters don't know, or the players don't know, right? So what I mean is, if you're looking for balance, make in theory, you could just play a combat scene out until the player characters are almost dead and beaten. And the last strike, they kill the bad guy. Like it's literally that easy to make it like, if they kill him too early, like, did they kill him too early? I mean, who says they killed him too early? You could keep going. Like, so like,
you didn't
feel
tell
it
him how
out.
many hit points he has?
Yeah. You're like you're like an artist, right? And that's where like the art and science of things come. Like there is a science behind CR balance and encounter balance. There is that, but there's also an art. And I think the art is when you kind of bend the rules and you kind of use your DM empowerment to shape how the combat feels, and you decide when it ends. And you end it on a climactic moment where it's beneficial for both the characters and the story and everyone at the table.
And if you're doing an adventure, by the time you get to your big bad evil guy encounter combat at the end, you've done a couple of smaller combats. You know what the average AC your party can easily hit is. If the big bad evil guys is lower than that, no, it's not.
Yeah. You can adjust things. I must admit, like the way I kind of view it is in at least when it comes to like kind of encounters within an adventure. I kind of try and almost kind of avoid the kind of like, things like the banish or the polymorph, not by, again, removing those spells, but trying to insert elements within the environment that are just cooler than banish or polymorph, like, I don't know.
Just
like
about to say,
yeah, no, please go ahead.
No, you first, you
I'm
first.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, so for example, like in one of my recent adventures, I have this creature which is very sensitive to loud sounds. I put a gong in the room, and immediately the players are like, this could be a weapon, and suddenly, that's hopefully again, I never know for sure.
Is a weapon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so when I was playtesting it, one of my players grabbed the gong and threw it like a frisbee. It was an impressive moment. But yeah, no, sorry, Sadie.
No, so I have been running my campaign for 3 years at this point, and the players are starting to get into tier 3 and tier 4, and I'm finding that the thing that makes combat encounters interesting now is sort of the story around the encounter. So, and they like it when something changes up the pattern. So, they're fighting a fiend, but I tell them the fiend has just grabbed 2 civilians and is probably going to eat them next turn. You can see him looking at them hungrily. And so the game for that round does not deal damage to it as much as possible. It's, get the civilians out of its hands before it eats them. Or it's not kill these 2 archangels in the throne room who are masquerading as the king's advisors. Like, yeah, that's technically the goal, but for the first 3 rounds, your goal is get the king out of the room before they kill him. And the more like, and that's kind of an interesting way to add challenges for any kind of party, because every person, no matter what their build is going to have ideas for that. I've thrown these at my players, and the cleric has as many ideas as the fighter has ideas, as the ranger has ideas. And so it's something that can keep all of them engaged. How do you save the civilian? How do you stop the monster from doing something real bad? Anyone can engage with that, and it adds a layer of complexity to the fight that makes it more satisfying than you can really do at like level 5 when they have less tools.
My favorite plot twist combat that I've done for like a high level party, when I've got a campaign going on and on and on every now and again, because I can't remember what spells you've taken and everything, I ask them for their character sheets so I can remember what they have, so I don't have to constantly ask them, what does XYZ spell do? Ask them for their character sheets before the session. Everything's all normal. They come to this laboratory for the bad guy they've been fighting this whole time, and there's these 5 golems. It's them. It's just them.
I love a good fight yourself.
I like that.
They were so mad. They're like, we took such powerful spells. And I'm like, yeah, you did. This is great. How do you defend against them? We didn't take defensive magic.
Yeah.
I was like, well, good news. Neither did they.
No, but no, I think generally it kind of adds like any kind of like anything that kind of avoids the kind of the combat feel of like two enemy forces within a flat open field. That's arguably like the worst end of the
serpentine.
Yeah, that's like the worst end of the spectrum, and there's so many different ways that you can go about it. Environmental effects, but different objectives, like things that can kind of add that kind of like spice to kind of shape up and keep things kind of going kind of dynamic.
The size and shape of your rooms as you're designing your encounters and everything, definitely consider the space you're putting them in. An encounter in a 30 by 30 room is way different than an encounter in like an open forest.
I mean, corridor fights are the worst.
Yeah, an encounter in a corridor.
An encounter in a corridor can like get the fuck out of here.
No, it just turns into like literally like traffic. I'm just like, sorry, I just want to just get over. I'm melee. I need to get to the front. I have
as
a fast
DM,
pass.
That's my least favorite thing is when they summon the bad guy to the door of the room, and then there's like one person in the door, and all the bad guys in here, and all the good guys out here, and they're like
bottleneck.
Trade spots real quick, everybody. I'm like, all right, well, I got a lot of opportunity attacks going on here. And they're like, but he's standing in the doorway. How do we get past? And I'm like, you got to kill him. Well, we accidentally summoned the paladin over here, okay?
Yeah. So then
he's got slender hit points.
I guess to kind of like so round things off, I've got two kind of questions to kind of round things off. There's one talking about like how we end an adventure, but I do kind of like to kind of maybe use this opportunity to kind of steal some knowledge. And just kind of ask you if there's like when it comes to writing adventures or creating adventures, if there's any golden rules that any of you kind of live by, and they could be about anything.
I mean, the only golden rule is there is no rule. There's no wrong way to write an adventure.
Okay, Ginny, you have to give me 2 rules.
I know. Well,
there are no rules.
That one's not.
This chaos, the whole world.
Okay, I have one. I have a golden rule. No, I have a golden rule. Never tell the characters what they're doing in the box text. Never tell them what they're thinking. Never tell them what they're doing. Never tell them what they're feeling. Unless it is literally like your skin is getting cold, but you can't tell them you feel fear.
You could tell them sense with their senses. Yeah,
no, that's not your prerogative. Let go of the reins. You don't get to tell them that. You only get to set the scene. That's it.
Box text should never say, as you walk through the door. What if I didn't want to walk through the door?
Yeah. What if I didn't touch it?
I agree with those rules.
First off, let's I'm definitely gonna touch it. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of like edging our way around like a box text civil war.
We're not box text argumenting. We don't have James here. We don't need to do this.
I mean, I will throw down with James if I need. Box text is good and can be very useful. It just needs to be done well.
Yeah.
I mean, we all agree on that. Bad box text is worse than no box text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm really sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
I think a rule that I have is, and this is kind of like goes to the psychology of the player, okay? Mm-hmm. And that is players are going to trust you when you start them off in a situation, kind of. And what I mean is, and it can be to your advantage and in storytelling. So one of my adventures, Heir of Orcus, that's on DMsGuild. It starts off where the characters have already accepted a quest and they're in a carriage, right? And so you always believe, well, you're working for the good guys because that's the trope. Well, in this case, you're actually working for a group of a devil cult, the Zerial, but you don't know that. So you're in this carriage and you're going to your thing, and Holy Knights of Tyr stop the carriage and they like bring the carriage driver down, who's a cultist, and they're going to execute him. And the players, 80% of the time, this is an Adventures League adventure, they kill these Holy Knights of Tyr. And I did this on purpose psychologically because I know that people kind of trust that, no, the people I'm working for can't be bad, but they could. And you don't, and so just to see how they act. So I think in storytelling, if you want to subvert tropes sometimes or throw a curveball at your characters, try it and just take what's the normal mundane situation, but flip it on its head. And you'll be surprised they'll be like, oh my God, we just joined a cult. And you're like, yep. And they're like, oh crap. So,
no, but that's kind of like the powerful sentiment behind that is again, that there's a good amount of power in tropes, and you can use them and bend them to kind of your advantage. In the same way that, the tavern is tried and true cliche. There's still so much design void of things, weird stuff that can happen in a tavern. So don't, even if it is that's overdone trope or cliche, there's still space for you to kind of have your own kind of spin on it. Ginny.
I want to take my golden rule in a different direction.
All right.
Something that as a DM, I would love to see in any published adventure that you intend me to run for people is take the time to put a little bit at the front of it. First off, give me like a table of contents. Second off, like just a little summary. You know, what's the goal of the adventure? What's the goal of part 1? What's the goal of part 2? What's the goal of part 3? That's it. You only need like not even a quarter of a page to tell me on that bit, like, how is this gonna go? Like, what are the important points?
You should not ever be surprising the GM. You should be giving the GM the power to surprise the players, but you should never be surprising the GM. They should know exactly what's the deal up front.
I shouldn't have to read every single word and thing to be able to run it. Obviously, like if you can read every single word and mark it up and highlight it and all of that, you're doing great, wonderful. You're going above and beyond. I love you. I'm not that GM. I don't have that time. None of us have that time.
I must admit, my mind went straight to like the idea of like an adventure where it gets to the ending and the GM is like, wait, they're the bad guy?
We're the bad guys.
Matthew, like you and I made a point to like explain at the beginning of the Tyke's Torment that we wrote together in Waterdeep, like there's a lot going on here.
There was a lot.
These are the key points that you need to like get your players to, because it was really open box.
Yeah.
But like hit these points somewhere. And then after you've hit these points and gotten in whatever order you please,
flow shots.
Hit this one.
Yeah.
And like if that's not at the beginning of your adventure, chances of me grabbing it and running it randomly, real low.
0.
I mean, basically 0. Yeah. If 20 million people recommended it to me, I might still run it. Okay?
Yeah. 0.1.
Yeah.
So I think I've been thinking about what my golden rule actually is, although I am passionate about that box text. Do not tell me what I'm doing in the box text, but my golden rule, and this is very personal and other people might disagree, and that's fine, but I think that adventure design should have as many ways to win as it does to lose. There is nothing more frustrating for me in adventure design where you have to do a certain thing exactly the right way to win. Like, let's hypothetically, if there's a bad guy and you want to touch her emotional core to get the best ending, you want her to be redeemed, right? And if you do that, then something happens. If you tell me that the only way to reach her emotions is a single diary in a certain room upstairs and that's it, I'm going to be ticked. You need to do the diary in this room and the family photograph in this room and the doll in this room. Like there should be as many ways to win as there are to lose. Otherwise, it's not fun, because that's the bad kind of railroading where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't hit that one button, so you lose. That's bad railroading. Like, I'm still taking you to a story where you like reach her, but you can get there through the music room or her personal bedroom or the dining room. Like, as long as you visit one of those locations, you'll get there.
You should have clues everywhere. To follow on to that point, there shouldn't be anything that you are absolutely required to know that can only be figured out via a skill check.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it requires a skill check and you have to know it, throw the skill check out.
Yeah. I think what it kind of the idea of like just put some redundancy in, you know, have the ways, you know, to ensure that the party can get to where they need to.
Pass the skill check to brew this tea. That's the only way to wake up this unconscious person. You.
On this topic, real quick, I'll just be real fast. So I've started in some of the recent adventures I started designing. I started to this point about doing something that might cause you to fail. I started just including a like an inline subheader, like underneath the check that's required. It's called failing forward. If you fail the check, you still move forward, but this little bad thing happens. Like you take hit point damage. So like just think of it that way. If you think of failure as failing forward, there is no failure. It's failing forward. then you can just, go along with the golden rules there.
And I mean,
it worked perfectly in the example. You failed at brewing the tea properly. The guy still wakes up, but like his memory is a little jumbled.
Yeah.
And he's telling you everything all out of order, so it takes you longer to figure it out. Oh no, how horrible.
And I mean, like,
still awake.
In the best kind of way, sometimes the failures can be as fun as the successes, and that's kind of what you kind of want it to be.
Yeah, now we have a new puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. So last question then, before we get around and hear about everyone's Twitter handles, so people
I'm
can.
so proud of your time management skills. You're doing so much better than I do.
Yeah, who knows? I've done this for 2 years, so maybe I've picked up.
I want to take a moment to interrupt Matthew and let's everyone have a Matthew appreciation moment. Matthew is the best.
Oh,
we love
He is.
Matthew.
Thanks, guys.
2 years. That's an accomplishment.
Okay,
Yeah.
watch
2
every
years.
single episode and go buy his stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys can get your £10 afterwards.
Just so you know, I watched your video that we did together 2 years ago in April 2020. I wore the same clothes just to see if anybody
did?
noticed. Yeah, I did. Yeah,
I didn't own this sweater then.
Yeah.
So
I'll be honest. There's a good chance I wear this way too much. So, no. Final question then is we talked about the start of adventures, and what better way to kind of end the podcast with how do you end an adventure?
Terribly. I'm bad at that. I mean, I think when you end an adventure, there should be options for how it ends as well. Did you succeed? Did you fail? Like, especially when you do organized play stuff, we write box text options for both. You went through, you prevented the war and you were victorious. And here's the box text about the celebratory party. You went through and you prevented the war, but there were still major losses. So there's a memorial with a slight celebratory tone for the realization that we could have all died. Yeah. Or you failed and you slink away from the town that you were supposed to save, feeling agony and regret that you were unable to get them to come together to prevent their demise. Like I fully think that like any adventure should have options for how it ends. Mm-hmm. Because just as you can't tell them how they feel when they walk into a room, you can't tell them how it ends. Like, did they kill Strahd? Or for whatever reason, did they fall in love with Strahd?
It happens,
What? I mean, some people think Strahd's a daddy. Whatever.
I'm
stun locked.
Bite me, daddy.
Yeah.
Anthony, Sadie, any thoughts? Not on the Strahd stuff, or just Eddie's.
No, we're gonna leave all of that to Oliver.
Anthony, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot do you think Strahd is?
Oh, definitely a 10. Come on, Strahd. Okay, I'd be like, hey, Strahd,
Sadie.
I'd be like, hey, I don't know what's going on, Strahd.
Very charming.
Oh no, my neck! It's so vulnerable.
I know. I don't know. I got lost in the woods. I don't know where I'm at. Yeah.
Oh no!
Part of me just wants to end the podcast there.
Although personally, I would go with Beth Sabard. She is the ancient, not gender swap Strahd, whatever,
Yeah, dude, that's topical. That's good.
Ending adventures. A climax, a high note, obviously. Almost you have to take advantage of the adrenaline of the character, and know that. I'll give you an example of how not to end an adventure, okay? Lord of the Rings, the movie. When you have 10, the last one, The Return of the King, you have like 10 different endings going on. I'm like, just end it already. Like, I was excited, and then it's like, and now Frodo's seeing all his buddies come in, and now Frodo's watching the boats go away, and now Aragorn's becoming the king. It's like, I get it. That's cool. But like the adrenaline rush from like the victory to like the ending, it kind of like faded. Like it just kind of it went on. So,
I don't know how I feel about this, Anthony.
Like, I'm just saying, look, hey, sometimes we need to speak harsh truths, okay. All right? Like it kind of just dragged on. And I love it.
Sometimes we need to speak, bad opinion.
The season 2 finale of Titans had the same thing. There were like 6 separate points where I'm like, oh, this is the end of the episode. It's all wrapped up. So why are we still going on?
It's just, it's just say, look, boom, you're done, boom, end it. Call it a day.
Like hit the climax and have a definitive ramp down and then wrap up your loose ends.
Yeah, I don't need an hour of ending.
If it's part 1 of a trilogy, obviously, explain how we're going on, but still have an obvious ending and then stop there.
Exactly. That's it. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
Stop at the end. Don't go.
And what about you then, Sadie? Because I imagine, like, is it any at all different? Well, because you mentioned a good part of your adventure is keeping that kind of emotional through line. I imagine it's kind of like maintaining or kind of reaching that kind of, pinnacle.
You really want to hit that emotional climax, and then you want to make sure that you wrap up the emotional parts of it. So I want to make sure that, like, if the daughter is if your NPC companion is the daughter of the big bad, I'm going to throw in a paragraph about what happens to her, and things that the characters could do for her, or things that she might offer to the characters. Something I really like when adventures do also is options for continuing the adventure. I think that can be really fun, especially if the designer had in mind, like, oh, that item that you saw earlier that you disappeared somewhere, yeah, that was taken by someone else now, and they're going to go on to become a bigger bad. Like,
you're like
because
the Hobbit, and it turns into
Yeah.
the Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. Like, I think that it can be.
You can't steal Anthony's examples.
I think that it can be really fun to like, I think that there's something to be said for the elegance in an adventure that is designed to have a clean ending in case that's all you want to do, but also continue if there's a group that's inclined to do it. You don't want to, like, cliffhanger them.
Yeah, or just like shut the door in their face saying, adventure's over, go on.
Go home.
Yeah.
But,
No, part 1 of the adventure.
Yeah.
Decidedly complete. Return next week.
You make everything a trilogy.
As our heroes decide, what do we do now?
I also personally like ending the adventure on a quiet moment. Like, and that's kind of goes back to my emotional cores. Like, you beat the bad guy, you get your payment, and then maybe you go attend a memorial, with someone, or you stand with someone as they reflect on something that happened in the adventure, or you return something to someone who lost. Like, I like ending the adventure on a very peaceful note, and something that hopefully provides that last sense of catharsis.
I think for me, the actual ending, like Sadie said, that's an excellent point. Like, not necessarily like catharsis or anything, but like the end of the adventure. So you got it from a quest giver at some point, right? So you don't just end when you've done the thing. You give them the chance, you take it back to the quest giver, you turn it in, and you give them a chance to regale the town with their heroics. How did you manage? No one's been able to. We need to know.
Yeah.
And let them be the heroes for a minute. And then you can go to your memorial if that was, a part of the thing. Or, then you can, build your house on the plot of land the town has just gifted you because you're their savior, like, you need to incorporate time, plan it in to your adventure for them to be the hero at the end. If that's, what the goal of the adventure is. If the goal of the adventure is, more nebulous, like, I don't know. I'm stuck on Dark Souls right now.
Yeah.
The goal of the adventure is to not die. But at the end, they don't necessarily need to be the hero. They need to, establish that, like, I beat the darkness and I can beat it if it comes back. Probably.
Yeah. There's always an element to, like, those kind of quiet moments about allowing the kind of the space for reflection. Those moments where the player party can reflect about what exactly happened, and those have those moments where the player's like, did we just fight a god? Is that a thing that we all did collectively? Is that okay? Just we're all on the same page here of what just happened, and those moments, you can kind of bring everyone together with it.
And then we count our gold and decide what kind of boat to buy.
Yeah, exactly. But no, awesome. And I honestly, I think that's kind of like a fantastic point to kind of round things off. No, by all means.
All right, I would be remiss if I didn't ask. In the 2 years of your show, what golden rule or what lesson of nugget of wisdom can you give us?
Wow.
Yeah, what's your favorite nugget of wisdom so far?
My favorite nugget is the fact that in the was it 104 or so, like narrative, like the tabletop RPG designers that I've spoken to, they all kind of say that they don't like the start of a project, they don't like the middle of the project, and they don't like the end of a project. But no, geez, wow. See, I'm so good at asking questions. I don't know how to answer them. No, I honestly, I think.
All right, I'm gonna have you on my show. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Shit. I honestly, I think, like, my personal favorite advice is just where possible, make the experience of creating an adventure or anything as collaborative as possible. And I think it's that case of where, it's not, there's no such thing as too many, well, there probably is such a thing as too many cooks, but, more eyes, more experiences, more kind of, collaborative experiences kind of make the whole thing.
Great advice, especially if it's like a group you already know.
Yeah.
You know what kind of things they expect, what kind of things get them excited. Take those excitements, bake them in.
Bring more people to the party is what I say. But
they
no,
spent all this time going to wizarding school. Go to the wizarding school. It's a quest.
Yeah, and everyone knows that that's all they want. But yeah, no, honestly, well, there you go. Thank you again. Thank you, Anthony, Sadie, Ginny. Honestly, I'm so thankful you all agreed to come back. Yeah,
of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a reasonable hour for us.
I think I've done all right. I'm not as lucid as I thought I'd be, but yeah, he's hoping to release one more year, and then maybe we can reconvene and see where we're at.
No.
But
here's to many more years.
Hey, yeah. I've only got one more in me.
Hey, nobody said many more years of this.
Oh, that's
right?
true. I want the three of you, like whatever happens to me, just next year reconvene, and yeah, you can record the.
You're gonna, even if you don't do this podcast or whatever you call shows on YouTube.
That's true. Yeah.
Everything's a podcast to me.
Yeah.
May you go on to many more years of success. And you're always gonna leave your mark on the tabletop industry.
No, thank you very much.
There's been so many people who've learned so much from you.
So I'm flustered. So what I'm gonna do is let's go around one more time, and people can drop their Twitter handles, or the best way to kind of stay up to all their news, and then I'll ask the final question, which I'll answer this week. So Anthony,
awesome,
take us away.
All right. Yeah, I'm Anthony Joyce Rivera. You can find me on Twitter at Thrawn589. Look forward to seeing you all there.
That's it. That's the whole thing.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Hey, yeah. You can find him on Twitter. He doesn't have a website. You don't know where to get his
AnthonyDreams.com. There you go. AnthonyDreams.com.
That's all
Check
on your
me out.
Twitter, though, right?
Yeah, it's all on my Twitter. Yeah, everything's on my Twitter. Yeah.
All right.
Go on. Ginny, take us away.
I know. I'm Ginny Loveday. You can find me on Twitter and all of the other platforms, including YouTube right now. I'm so excited for that. At Ginny Loveday, GINNYLOVEDAY. And there is a link on my Twitter to all my other stuff.
Nice. And yeah, bring us home, Sadie.
Oh gosh. Thank you so much, Matthew, for letting us be a part of your celebration, and for 2 years of talking to us creatives who are so nerdy and passionate about what we do, and who love geeking out with you because you're so nerdy and passionate, and you're the best person to geek out with. So thank you. It's a huge honor. I'm Sadie Lowry. You can find me at Incandescent on Twitter. It is the word incandescent with an A before the E. I have not changed it yet, and I guess I don't intend to.
No.
Never. SadieLowry.com is my website. Sadie Your Lady is my Instagram. I'm back on that now, I guess. Just chilling. And
maybe I need you to come talk on my panel about Instagram content creators.
I mean,
it's a very limited amount of people, apparently.
Yeah, it's mostly like right now flip-flopping back and forth between like pictures of the cupcakes I bake and pictures of the occasional promo. So like
important content right there.
Yeah, super. My cupcakes are pretty good though. So
there you go. Come for the cupcakes, save for the occasional table. No, any other links or anything to drop, Sadie?
No.
Okay, there you go.
Buy her book. Buy her Critical Role book when it comes out. Yes.
I love the Netherdeep, please, and tell me if you like it, because that's my baby.
We already love it, and it's not even out. Matthew, where are you?
I'm Whitby Writes. My name's Whitby. I write things. You can find me at Matt_Whitby. There's no underscore there. But yeah, I've got a new adventure that came out recently. The Tome of Silence, Attack of the Astral Devourers. That'll be a link in the description somewhere. Nice to pick that up. But other than that, yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening. And yeah, I was thinking about just throwing my final question, which is how you end a podcast to just everyone at the whole time. But I'm gonna end
the podcast every time very awkwardly. That's it for this episode, everyone.
I'm gonna steal your thunder, Ginny. I'm gonna end it myself and say no.
Do it.
I'm gonna say thank you to everyone who's been listening. This has been it's been a wild roller coaster of the last 2 years, and anyone who's spent even an hour of their time listening to me natter, and has survived it. I appreciate it, and doubly so for all the people who spend their time like this lovely trio, dedicating their time to just chat with me about cool stuff. So yeah, I'm not taking a break. I'm gonna continue more into the third season, the third year, and who knows what happens. We'll take it week by week. So
Don't
thank
forget
you.
to subscribe.
Yeah, oh yeah, do that too. And then I'll just wave and then just slowly sink down into. Oh, my knees have given way.
My chair's not that
I do like the fact that like the kind of Sadie, you are quite far behind the curve.